there was a helicopter crash involving the president of Iran. This happens obviously just weeks after the attack on Israel by Iran. This helicopter crash was allegedly due to bad weather and faulty old equipment. But obviously this has created an uproar in the Middle East of what it's going to look like going forward. What does this mean? Does this mean there's an opportunity for maybe some sort of diplomacy to take place where you could have someone, because you have what was called, obviously the president there, Raisi. President Raisi was known as the Butcher of Tehran for his oversight of mass executions of political prisoners in 1988, and of course was probably responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths of Iranian people. So now we look towards what happens next. You obviously had thousands in the streets praying for maybe his safety when there was unsure, because the original reports came out that they had suffered a hard landing, and then it continued to unfold. And I think everyone knew where it was going. It was snowy. There are wolves. There was a lot of things happening in that region. And of course, the news was confirmed late last night, early this morning, Iranian time, that in fact, all the passengers on board this helicopter had perished. They said the crash killed eight people in all, including 3 crew members. And again, if you really look back on it, a really interesting time for this obviously to happen. Someone who is beloved by some in their community. And then there were reports, there was videos kind of unverified of people celebrating. There were fireworks going off. Now, some people have said those videos were when they attacked Israel. Some just a little unsure. When it comes out of that area of the world, you don't really know what you're getting. It actually took a very long time for them to even say that he had been killed in this crash. But the death of the president of Iran, obviously above him is the Ayatollah.
So Ayatollah Khamenei is 85 years old. He has had a litany of health issues over the past years. Even during the COVID pandemic, there was imagery that came out that looked like he was attached to medical devices and things. So not in good health. And a lot of people had been talking about who his successor would be because there isn't a named successor. Raisi was high on this list. While he is the president of Iran, he is in theory elected by the people of Iran, but really the Ayatollah picks who he wants to be president, and they have an election, and you know how that goes. But he was very much seemed like he was being positioned to take over when either the Ayatollah passes away or steps down from that role. Now this kind of creates a power vacuum within Iran, especially with the president who is in that role, but also the foreign minister at a time when they have a lot of foreign adventurism going on, also killed in that helicopter crash as well.
There's a vulnerability that maybe has not happened in a long time here, Will, where now you do have a moment. If you have the people where in there's a special election that has to happen. Now, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying that it's going to be fully legitimate. But there is a moment right now for Iran to kind of change course. And maybe this happens sometimes. Maybe sometimes the government is smart enough to actually look around what's happening, see what the people are doing, because they don't want to be overthrown violently, and course correct.
What you see here is an embarrassment to the regime when their thousands of drones and missiles and rockets didn't land anywhere in Israel, as well as now the death of their president and foreign minister in just the weeks following that. It is by their law that now the first vice president is the interim president to help set up the mechanism for a special election that is by law will take place in 50 days. So there's a short runway here of the Ayatollah to figure out what he wants the replacement to look like, what he wants the future of the government to look like. And as you say, potentially a course correction. I wouldn't give him any credit there. But there is also that opportunity of the people seeing real weakness in the regime for maybe the first time in a long time. We saw the Green Revolution back in 2009 that President Obama and Vice President Biden at the time largely snubbed. They didn't speak out in favor of these student protesters that really had an opportunity to make change, but the United States did not lend their support or even lip service to these protests. And what you saw was a failed attempt at revolution. Maybe that movement has grown, has gotten stronger, and you see in the result of all of these failures by the Iranian regime recently, perhaps there's a will of the people to stand up and do something more.
What was your feedback when you first saw these sort of headlines sort of breaking over the weekend? And again, what does it mean for Americans?
Well, the first thing I thought was, the leader in Iran, Khamenei, is 85 years old. He just turned 85. And he's frail. And there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years as to who's going to replace him. Raisi, as the president, is basically the number two person to Khamenei. And he was handpicked by Khamenei. Now, you'll hear a lot about the parliament or others having to put forward a presidential candidate and a vote. But make no mistake, Khamenei picks that, and everything else is just a show. And so now that the hand-picked successor, the number two person, if you will, Raisi, the president under Khamenei, now that the president has been killed and the foreign minister, there's an all-out battle and pure chaos going on. Khamenei, again, is 85 and not on a day-to-day basis involved. And so he's got lieutenants and people that are trying to figure this out. But this is pure chaos. Now is the time, I think, for the international community to think about squeezing on the international front the fact that this regime is hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon. We've got to stop them. You see what they funded on October 7th inside Israel and know that if they had a nuclear weapon, it could get dramatically worse.
Rick, I think about the power struggle that's going on within Iran right now, and I also think about their somewhat embarrassing attack on Israel, where they tried to show that they could launch these missiles and drones, but none of them were able to fall within Israel's territory without being shot down by the Israelis. We've always hoped for some sort of internal movement to be able to rise up and topple potentially the regime in Iran. And we saw when the Obama administration didn't really give the time of day to the Green Revolution and many other iterations that have gone since then. Do you think that there's an opportunity for the people of Iran to see real change with this power vacuum, as well as some of the embarrassing global headlines about the Iranians? Or is it going to be necessary for a strong American leadership to be there for something like that to actually come to fruition?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's a great question, Will. I mean, the reality is that the Obama-Biden team missed the Green Revolution the moment that the Iranian people were taking to the street. You have to remember, and I try to do this all of the time, to not lump Iran into one. It's the radical regime that's controlling the government, and then it's the people, because the people hate the regime. They just can't always voice it because they're very nervous about getting killed. There's systematic abuse, human rights denials. So they have to be very careful. But given the tools like the internet, without government blockers, the people, when they get this information, can be extremely powerful. That tool, that freedom of the internet, was cut off from them by the government during this moment, the Green Revolution, when they took to the streets under the Obama-Biden administration. And little was done by the Americans. I think we have to recognize we have the technology to take down Iran's government censors. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just give the access to the people constantly? It's going to be a game back and forth of trying to stop the government's wall. They'll keep putting it up. But it's doable, and it's much safer than having American boots on the ground or some sort of a coup or military operation. Give the tools to the people in Iran. That's what should be happening. I think it should be happening now. But remember, half of the Obama-Biden team is now in charge, and it's the Biden-Harris team. I don't think that they have the guts to actually do something in this moment.